Well, great. Oh, looks like we're there. Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Well, good evening to what is this? The 7th, March 7th, 2024, Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, the best coordinating committee in the tri-state area. I hope everyone's been doing well. We're going to kick things off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll move into introductions. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, like I said, good evening. We have a pretty full agenda today, so we'll keep it moving and try to get out of here at 8 o'clock. Paul and I would love to be done at 8. We'll see how that goes, right, Paul?
Yeah, good luck with that, Mayor, but we'll try.
All right. So, welcomes around. So, I am Brian Hodson. I am the mayor of Canby and your C4 co-chair with Commissioner Savas. Paul.
Yep. Paul Savas, Clackamas County Commissioner, co-chair C4. Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, sir. Councilor Pratt.
Sorry, I always get called it toward the end. Valerie Pratt, 12th City Council.
Thank you very much. Mayor Milch.
Michael Milch, Mayor of Gladstone.
Excellent, sir. Thank you very much. Councilor Sherman.
We're at Sherman City Councilor, Happy Valley.
All right. Miss French.
Sherry French, Clackamas River Water.
Excellent. Good to see you. Mayor Buck.
Good evening, Joe Buck, Mayor of Lake Oswego.
Perfect. Mayor Fitzgerald.
Julie Fitzgerald, Mayor of Wilsonville. Thank you.
No, thank you for being here. Councilor Stavengord.
Hi, everyone. Rebecca Stavengord, she, her pronouns, city councilor in the city of Milwaukee. Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Mr. Hilliard. All right, well, I need you to unmute yourself. Okay,
Yes.
round 2. Here you go.
Mark Hilliard representing the Hamlets, the Hamlet of Beaver Creek.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. Mr. Sarah.
John Sarah, TriMet, and Brian, I'm not sure. Am I representing transit at this meeting?
Yes, as part of our administrative updates, we have new members to introduce. So, John, you'll be tapping in as the urban transit rep.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure. Good to see you all, and thanks for having me.
Mr. Gornick.
Paul Gornick from Okolodge Water, representing sanitary districts.
Excellent. Mr. Cherico, Hamlet of Malino.
Hi, Derek Cherko here, chairman of the Hamlet of Malino, the alternate representative for the Hamlets.
Excellent. Mr. Silva.
Matthew Silva, Fire Districts.
Good deal. Good to hear from you, sir. Last but not least, my friend and yours, Mayor Kaiser.
Scott Kaiser, Mayor of Malone.
I'm really glad that you joined these meetings, Scott, because, you know, it gets so much more entertainment value when you're on here. So I appreciate it because Paul and I can only pick on each other so much.
I look at it as punishment.
And we're off and running. Okay. Like I said, we got a pretty heavy agenda this evening, so we're going to get things started here with our STIP funding and local transit service. I believe we have Christina Babcock here to present and fill us in.
And just before we jump into that, can we get approval of the minutes? And also just want to make sure everybody had a chance to see the updated membership list that is included online.
I always skip that. I just like to get into it. All right. Everyone read the notes, minutes, and
I have one change. There's I missed the last meeting and was represented by Susan Keel, Keil. That should be reflected in the minutes.
Thank you for that. We'll make that change.
Thank you, Paul, for catching that. Okay. Any other comments, changes, questions? Okay, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll give it to Sherry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the minutes pass. All right. Now, Brian, can I go into the stiff funding?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. Christina, welcome this evening. How are you?
I'm good. I'm back to stir up some trouble with STIF, so I hope you all are ready.
We are excited.
All right. Brian, are you going to share or do you want me to share?
Feel free to present. You should have sharing
Okay.
permissions.
Let me work on that here. Can I get some head nods that you guys can see what I'm showing? All right. Looks good. So this presentation is building off a presentation I made, I'm not sure, 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, where there were a lot of questions. So I'm not going to go over too many basics, but what I am going to do is talk through some alternative funding methods for the STIF program. So when I was here a few weeks ago, we talked a lot about what is STIF, how it is distributed, and kind of some of the issues with the way that the distribution is currently done. So as a quick reminder, STIF funding is what is known as HB 2017 employee-based payroll tax, and it's collected based on where employees work, not where they live. There's 4 different types of funds. You have in-district formula funds, you have out-of-district formula funds, regional coordination dollars, and then what was known as the old STF funds. And as I highlighted last time I presented, the goals are really to expand and improve existing transit service and do that by increasing connections between transit providers and really looking at options to make transportation more equitable and more affordable. And then from those old STF funds, it's about providing transportation services for older adults and disabled populations. So on this screen, and I do apologize, guys, tonight you're going to see a lot of numbers. So I apologize, but that's just kind of how this one laid itself out. So this screen presents 2023 population data from the Clackamas County GIS team. And really what is of note on this page is to distinguish the differences between Washington County, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County. And so these numbers I asked to be run based on people that live within the TriMet service district versus those that live outside of the TriMet service district. And you can see that the demographics of Clackamas County down at the bottom there are significantly different than the others, where almost, well, just over 34% of our population in Clackamas County resides outside of the TriMet service district. So current funding method, like I said, is based on where people work. So what happens is STIF comes into the Tri-County area and it's dispersed with in-district formula funds to TriMet first, and then TriMet develops a plan, and some of that money ends up going to regional coordination funds for shuttles. And then the percentage as determined overall in Tri-County area for out-of-district formula funds is distributed to each county. And then in Clackamas County, we have 5 different providers that allocation is shared between based on an agreed upon allocation formula. So you have Clackamas County, you have South Clackamas, you have Canby, you have SMART, and you have Sandy Area Metro. So what that looks like is coming up for the 26-27 funding cycle. The projections are that a little bit under 70 million come in FY26, and a little bit over 72 million come in to the Tri-County area in FY27. And this is how the distribution breaks down. So TriMet receives about 95% of those funds, at Clackamas County 3.5%, and so on and so forth. And we take that 3.57%, this $2 million, and we split it among the 5 providers. And then TriMet keeps the remaining amount from Clackamas County, just Clackamas County alone. So it ends up meaning that Clackamas County and the 5 providers get $2.474 million to run our service, to run our STIF services and the expanded transit services for FY26. So I was asked to talk about what are some other methods of distribution. So tonight I'm just going to go over 3. These are probably 3 of the most straightforward alternative methods, although there's probably hundreds. So these are really just kind of the ideas that were born from the small transit providers and others. So one could be that collections of STIF dollars could be distributed based on the residence, right? So where people live, not where they work. Two could be collections distributed similar to the FTA 5311 formula, and I'll go over a little bit more about what that means here in a minute. And three, collections could be distributed adjusting for residents, meaning they could be distributed based on where people live, but maybe there's a true up system that adjusts for differing demographics depending on the county. So let's talk alternative one. Alternative one would be based on residents, not on employment. And if you use those numbers from that gray table that I had a few slides ago, that would mean that the STIF dollars would come into the Tri-County region, and 34% of Clackamas County residents live outside of the TriMet service district. So we would receive, as in Clackamas County, would receive 34.39% of the total STIF funds to then be distributed among the 5 providers in Clackamas County. You would do the same for Washington County and the same for Multnomah County, and then the remaining amount would go to TriMet. So if we compare that back to our original slide, TriMet was at 95%, and in this particular method, TriMet would be reduced to about 60%. And just for a numbers perspective, you can see below what that would mean for dollar figures for the Clackamas County area, which is obviously significantly more than the 2.4 million we currently receive. Alternative number 2 could be something similar to how FTA 5311 formula funds or FTA 5307 funds are currently distributed. And in 5311, what happens is every transit provider in the state receives a minimum distribution. And in this case, the minimum distribution would have to be decided, right, by somebody or a group of people. But you would look at something like $500,000 or $1 million, something that would be significant to affect transit. And then above and beyond that minimum distribution, it would be based on current service, like split between miles and rides provided, right? So 5311 is passed down from the FTA to ODOT. They have a formula they follow. Every provider receives a minimum of $200,000, and then any amount over that is determined by your National Transit Database reporting. So that's alternative 2, but applying that idea to STIF. And then any remaining dollars could be allocated based on residents, first to TriMet, based on their in-district population, and then remaining would be split among the counties. So a method like this would end up somewhere between current state and what was shown in alternative number 1. And ODOT already has kind of the formula written because they use it every biennium for 5311. So the amount of administrative burden wouldn't be too hard to move to a program like that. Alternative number 3 would kind of be like a mix. So it would be collections distributed adjusting for residents and regional transportation goals. So you could use the current allocations where 95.24% goes to TriMet, the 3.5 to Clackamas County, and so on and so forth. But you could adjust for out-of-district residents. So you could bring Multnomah County closer to 1%, which is their true out-of-district number. You could, bring Washington County up to 5 or 6%, which again is up to, closer to their out-of-district number. And you could get Clackamas County up to 17 or 18% based on their out-of-district number. So it's a way to kind of balance where they live versus where they work. And again, these are numbers used for illustrative purposes only, right? Presentation. This is not a scientific slide here by me. So again, these projections would bring more money into Clackamas County than current state, but less than that alternative number 1, which is on where people live, not where they work. So all of these alternative distribution methods that I've shown you, I said could, but they would increase Clackamas County funding significantly. And it would be important because there are a couple really big items that are coming our way for transit in Clackamas County that we're kind of just starting to get our hands around. And one of them is electrification of fleets. So the state of Oregon and climate reduction and everything that they're working towards is really pointing at the need to electrify fleets. And that's incredibly expensive, not just for TriMet, but for any of us. And we're going to need dollars to do that. It's very expensive to buy, as an example, a electrified Gillig bus, which are the bigger, 40-foot buses that are run. So if more money was coming into Clackamas County, it would help us start to build those electrification of our fleets. And it's not just the fleets that have to be done, it's also the operating buildings, right? Because many operating buildings don't have the ability to plug in and charge these vehicles. So a good percentage of the money that would come into Clackamas County would go towards capital and infrastructure updates. And then obviously there would be expansion of service based on local transportation development plans. So for Clackamas County specifically, that would look like increasing our shuttle services, providing some service over Redland Road, working with other transit providers to ensure we're making connections between service providers, and then the demand response services, which are dealt with under those old STF funds, which really, with TriMet service not being as heavy in Clackamas County is particularly important because there are a lot of areas that are not served by TriMet Lift for those that are 65 plus or experiencing a disability, and those demand response services kind of fill in that hole, if you will. Do you want me to pause?
Well, no, I can wait till the end, Christina.
Okay. I only got a couple more. All right, so distribution method changes would need to be done with changes to the rules, which is important. It's the rules, not the legislation. And so current rule states that the qualified entity may use any procedure of its choice to distribute STIF formula fund dollars, and that those qualified entities, which in our case is TriMet, shall work collaboratively with public transportation service providers. And so this could potentially be solved in a collaborative process with all of the transit providers, really developing a more concrete distribution method that factors in residents, current transit goals, regional transit goals, connectivity, and all of that other good stuff. So next steps, like I just alluded to, it could be as simple as discussions with TriMet as the current QE for potential distribution model changes. Discussions with the OTA and ODOT to push for rule changes within HB 2017. And then importantly, if we make distribution changes, we need to work with all the local jurisdictions to ensure transit specific planning is in place. And, with an influx in STIF planning that allows the county to more effectively work with some of these local jurisdictions that maybe don't have in-house transit planners and large staffs to deal with this, to help develop those transit plans that are required in order to be an STIF project. So I'm going to stop sharing. I see some hands, so.
Okay, so Christina, thank you. I appreciate that. So basically, one of the questions I think you just answered, and so in terms of the alternative, it's really going to be up to TriMet to decide which alternative to go with.
Well, I don't know that I would go so far as to say it's TriMet's to decide. I think it's designed to be a collaborative process. And when STIF came to be back before I was even at the county, there was discussions that I wasn't involved in, about how distribution takes place. And Commissioner Savas probably has a better historical base than I do on this, but it was decided for a variety of reasons that distributing based on where people work and where not where they live was the right methodology. And at the time, it very well could have been. And I guess what I'm saying, and many of the other small transit providers are saying, is that we are kind of at a different point now. And we don't believe that the distribution method is equitably addressing transit needs within the 3 counties. And we would love to work with the QE in a collaborative way to come up with some different distribution methods, but it might not be quite that simple, right? And yeah, I'm going to end there, Mayor Hudson.
Okay, the next question I had was regarding the electrification, and maybe I need to talk to my own transit person, but when is the expectation that we're going to have this our fleets converted to electrification? Do you know that, or should I take that to my transit?
Yeah, there's been some dates pulled out there. I know that your transit director, when they're building their new building, is setting himself up to be able to have an electrified fleet. 2027, they're talking about 2028. There's a lot of issues, and I want to just speak for Clackamas County Service. We go up to Mount Hood. We can't pull a 10% grade in 15-degree weather with an electric bus with 60 people on it. Right. I can't do it. I can't do it safely. So there's some issues, right? So I don't know that I've heard a hard date float it out there. Mr. Sarah from TriMet may have more information. I know they're working hard to go through electrifying their fleet as well and struggling to find all the funding they need to do that. So it's just something that's looming out there, right? And it's going to take money to execute.
The never-ending quest for the money tree. All
Correct.
right, thanks. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate that. Mr. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Christina, for the presentation. So I do want to clarify a few things. And first, I want to be clear on how TriMet spends the STIF funding that we currently get. And 70% of the STIF funding that we get right now goes directly to service and to capital improvement projects that support service. The other 30% of that funding goes towards our safety and security programs. It goes towards paratransit. It goes towards supporting service for older adults and people with disabilities and low-income fares, all of which are programs that directly support Clackamas County as well. If we are talking about changes to STIF funding that are not adding to the pot, but are instead diverting tens of millions of dollars per biennium from TriMet to other providers, that is tens of millions of dollars that we use for service. And that is going to have a profound effect on not just Clackamas County, but our entire service district and the service that we're able to provide, especially in a time when TriMet is working to expand the service that we're giving to everyone. I also want to point out that, Christina, I saw the numbers that you presented for what we provide you. I don't think that provides a full picture of all the money that the TriMet is providing to the county and to our regional providers. In the 2024-2025 biennium, we're also giving $6.8 million between the county, SMART, and Sandy Transit. We are also giving additional money from our STIF payroll to the tune of about $700,000 over the biennium for the Human Services Program, which is for people with disabilities and people and older adults, as well as $2.5 million over the biennium that's for similar things as part of our STIF population program. So there's a lot of funding there that I don't think was fully encompassed in your presentation that TriMet does give to the service providers for the services that you're talking about. And I just want to be clear, and I know some of you better than others, but I'm a resident of Clackamas County. I've worked my entire professional career trying to support this county. I really do consider it my job to make sure that you all are getting the services that you want and need from TriMet. That's what I'm here to do. And I'm looking at a time when we are going to a 2025 session where there's going to be a big conversation about transit and transportation and how our cities and how our communities funding all of these things. And I would really love to be a part of something where we are trying to figure out a way that the tide rises all boats and we are not just diverting funds and moving things around. I think that's possible, and we want to be a part of that. And I truly do want to work with you all on this, and we want to make sure that you all are getting the service that you need. I'm not sure that pursuing these specific plans is going to necessarily get us to that place, because again, diverting this funding is going to have a really big effect on the service that we provide for our entire district and not just Clackamas County. So thank you.
And yes, John, you are correct that those graphs that I shared are simply the formula dollars. That's how the formula for STIF distribution currently works. And you are not wrong. There is dollars given to regional coordination, as I listed as one of the 4 types of STIF funds.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So a little bit of historic perspective why we're having this conversation, and that is we're having this conversation because when HB 2017 passed, the legislative intent with regard to the STIF dollars was that it was last mile service. I call it first mile service, where people live, and it was supposed to be directed where people live, not where most of the money goes to, which is where people work, right? The employers. So what Christina has given out to you for numbers tonight that's the small bucket. The big monster bucket is the employee-based payroll fees that all employers pay in, that's a way bigger bucket than this STIF bucket. So we're only talking this particular portion. So when so we were excited. I mean, let's face it, we were excited because we already kind of knew we would get a lot of money and we actually be able to build service in this county. And I come with a 25-year perspective on this from sitting on my first transit committee in the 90s. And we have asked and we have asked. I'm not beating up on TriMet. I'm not beating up on anyone here. So I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I can. But I've spoken to the board. I've spoken to all the general managers. I've spoken to the Clackamas County representatives that sit on the TriMet board. And the answer always is, well, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money to expand service in Clackamas County. So when we heard about this change with this STIF funding back in 2017, naturally we're excited. What happened though is that it went to state rules, and TriMet lobbied for a number of complex reasons, which I won't get into tonight. But the state rules committee gave that formula and system and changed it somewhat to how Christina just described it to you earlier in the presentation. So we thought, and we were hopeful there would be more forthcoming to the areas that are underserved, don't have any service. And I'm talking within the TriMet service district. We are hoping to have more distribution within, because as the qualified entity, TriMet, they had money to spend and to expand service significantly. $23 million would go a long way. That's the delta, if I understood Christina's presentation. That would be the delta approximately, and how that would be split up. And so there's outside the district. So I think I said at the last meeting, and I didn't qualify this. I said at that last meeting that the city of Milwaukee has really the best transit service in Clackamas County, but I should have qualified that to say the best service in Clackamas County within TriMet service district. And I know that Wilsonville with SMART is not in TriMet service district, but they have great service, and so do all the other rural cities. So the entities outside the district could definitely use the funding to expand service. I'm sure every one of them could use that. But there's this big, huge desert in between the areas that are served within TriMet service district and the TriMet service boundary. And then also outside the TriMet service boundary, there's areas of rural Clackamas County in which our providers, our small providers, are doing a great job of trying to create routes and connect to each other and try to cover those areas. So that's not TriMet's responsibility, but it's not the small provider's responsibility, but they're doing a lot with very little. So if there is a revisit of how that money's distributed for that smaller bucket of money, the STIF funds, that would be a huge lift for Clackamas County. I don't know any other ways. I just, if you can't tell it in my voice, I have 25 years of frustration trying to bring more transit to Clackamas County. This is the only way. And I, for one, can't speak for all of you, but I, for one, want to be able to lobby for a change or an adjustment. Now, that can be done willingly and collaboratively, but absent that, I don't know any other way to get a change. And there's nothing, we have the state constitution, which disallows spending money on transit other than what the current mechanisms are. So a lot said, I took up a lot of time, but I just want to explain that's how we got here. That rules committee thing, none of us were pretty upset with that, and it hasn't, and we were hopeful that it would turn out in a more better distribution, but it just hasn't worked. Sorry, TriMet. Nothing personal.
As always, I appreciate your perspective, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mayor Hodson. I just wanted to appreciate Commissioner Savas's many years studying transit and hear what you're saying. And I would like to, hearing also what we heard from Mr. Sarah in this meeting makes me want to ask for yet another chart so that we can see all of those things on one page. Because when I hear about other pots of money verbally described here, it makes it hard, to just track all of that. And I'd like to be able to see all of that, so that we can see the other pots that are being given, so to speak, to these other providers. And then just one small clarification, Commissioner Savas, SMART is the Wilsonville Transit System. However, so that is really correct. There are parts of Wilsonville that are still in the TriMet service area, and they are being served by SMART. We don't collect a fee for that, but we're doing that service. So we have a mixture there. So I think just to help us all understand all of that so that it's not confusing what we see on this chart, I'd like to see more of a comprehensive look, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Sherman.
Couple questions this evening. I'm not sure if this would be a question for Christina or maybe for Commissioner Savas. So how, I would assume that the greater the change to the distribution structure, the less politically feasible it would be to get something done. Is that, I mean, is that a reasonable guess? If you're looking at diverting lots and lots of money, that's probably less of an outcome that can be collaboratively achieved versus a kind of a closer one to the current structure. And I guess the question really from a generic perspective is, how feasible is something like this? Is this something that can get kind of pass through?
Well, if it's directed to me, thanks for the question, Councilor Sherman. I would say that the State Rules Committee, when they did their work, they didn't necessarily divert the dollars then. They just changed the rules a bit. So we were hopeful that TriMet would give us a greater share, right? So in a sense that had there not really been a change of the State's Rules Committee, we would just get our share based on where people lived. So it wouldn't be proper to say the monies were diverted in the beginning and being asked to be diverted back. That's not really fair, because we were hoping that would be done voluntarily, collaboratively, but that didn't take place as I understand it. So is it a big lift? It could be, but I think there's 3 formulas there. Maybe there's another one. Maybe it's something that we could gradually work into. So maybe it's a conversation that could happen between the agencies that we're talking about here tonight, or we discuss it in the next session, or in the opportunities leading up to the next session. But I do know there are discussions taking place with the OTA, which is the Oregon Transit Association, if I'm right. And I do know we need to fix this. I think we got a lot of attention because a number of state legislators realized in this tolling conversation, when they found out that there was no transit and there's no funding for transit along that 205 corridor. So I think that's what shook the tree for everyone. And it was an eye-opener, say, wait a minute, how this happened. So I've been answering those questions to elected officials around the state when I'm approached by it. And I think there's interest in saying, well, that's not right. I say, well, I get it. That's why we're talking to you. So I think the opportunity to strike is now.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I guess so. Is there a different, if more revenue were to come into Clackamas County for this purpose, does that impact the areas of Clackamas County that are inside the TriMet service district versus outside differently? Like, I mean, would we have more revenue for like the entire county, and that would kind of potentially provide better service across the board? Or are we kind of thinking we would focus on the areas that are really underserved? Just kind of trying to understand the trade-off.
Yeah, Christina, I'll let you answer that, because it's both.
Yeah, it is both. And if I can just go back to your previous question, I mean, yes, it could be, any of these alternatives could be arrived at collaboratively. It's a matter of working towards the same end goal. And the reality is that, TriMet has a goal to serve all 3 counties, and Clackamas County has Clackamas County in mind, right? That's natural. So 2 of these alternatives would probably be easier to get to than the first one that I presented. And to answer your second question, I mean, yes, Mr. Sarah said it himself. If the STIF dollars are distributed in a different fashion, that TriMet will not have as much money to implement service in Clackamas County. We could talk about that for hours, and I won't talk about that for hours tonight, but I mean, that is the reality of the situation. But what I'm advocating for is a look at the distribution method to make it more equitable so that we can better serve those areas outside of TriMet. And to Commissioner Savas's point, the employer payroll tax is 10 times this. I mean, it's not even close. And, you know, the city of Canby collects an employer payroll tax, and the city of Wilsonville collects an employer payroll tax. This is not a lot of money when you compare it to that, but it's very important money. It's very important money for Sandy to be able to connect to the Clackamas Town Center. It's very important money for me to be able to run up the Highway 26 corridor to the mountain. You know, to bring tourism dollars to Clackamas County, to take people to work so we can staff the mountain, et cetera, right? So, yeah, it's both. And I believe that if all of us want to work collaboratively together, there are a lot of very smart people that work in transit that could come up with a system that would better serve everybody than the current system, which honestly, it serves the, you know, interior of the Tri-County area and leaves out, you know, those parts that are outside of the TriMet service district.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christina. Counselor Pratt, you get our last question.
Oh, well, I'm just, yeah, I really liked Mayor Fitzpatrick's idea of looking at all the funding, but I mean, when I just look at this, maybe I'm missing something, but it looks like 7.9% of the population's outside the TriMet district in Clackamas County, and it doesn't anywhere match the funding that's going there. So it sounds like that's what we're trying to correct here, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah. So 34.39% of the Clackamas County residents live outside the Tri-County service area, the TriMet service.
Right, but if you look at the total population,
the total population is
it's
9.
almost 8%.
Yep.
You know, just outside of TriMet for Clackamas County. So that's it seems like if you're basing it on population where they live, that they're very much underserved in this formula.
I would agree with that statement.
What might be of value is to because part of the TriMet service district dips down into Estacada, and also what a lot of people don't know is that a majority of Happy Valley is not in the TriMet services. So you have some population there. For those of you who don't know this, a little bit over half the population of Clackamas County is in the urban areas, and a smaller portion of the half, less than half, is outside in the rural areas, outside the urban growth boundary. So how much of that is served by TriMet population wise might be a good number to understand, just total count. I'd like to know that at some point. That's not a directive to anyone, but that might be a value to get a better understanding. And then you can do the math on how many people are served by transit within reasonable transit service standards. And then I think you'll see a majority of that population is not being served. And I years ago, when this stiff thing came out after the rules committee, I sit on the STIF committee. I'm going to be termed out at the end of this particular term, but I have another 3 years or so left. But what I had asked for was a region-wide level of service study for transit in TriMet Service District, and that would give us an idea, because we're not in this alone. Washington County does not have anywhere near the proportion of transit coverage that Multnomah County has, for example. So it's about how we spread it more equitably. And if greenhouse gas issues are, again, state mandate, we have to look at it. You have no choice.
For sure. Okay, well, Christina, thank you for this. I appreciate the presentation. Hopefully we weren't too rowdy on you tonight about stiff. I mean, I think, again, we'll just keep after it and keep fighting to provide the service. All right, we're going to move on to supportive and public housing update. And then we've got both Mr. Browns and Mr. Ellen.
And Adam and Vahid, you should be able to present.
Yeah, good evening. Adam, were you going to start with any opening remarks, or should I launch?
Nope, nothing for me, Vahid. Vahid and Devin are largely going to take this one tonight. Good evening, everybody. Adam Brown, Deputy Director, Clackamas County Health, Housing, and Human Services. largely going to defer to them, but here to support the conversation whatever way I can.
Thanks, Adam, and good evening, C4 members. I'm Vahid Brown, Deputy Director of Housing and Community Development for Clackamas County. Just wanted to check in with the co-chairs on the timeline for your agenda. I know you've got a number of other items. I'm happy to depart from my slide deck for my part and just provide a brief update on SHS implementation progress, but I'm also happy to just kind of go through the slides. Any preference from the co-chairs and Brian Ockaday?
I don't follow. Do you have a preference?
Nope, whatever works for you, best for you, Vahid.
All right. Well, I will share our presentation and I'll try to move through it quickly. So I'm going to provide the first half of the presentation, an update on supportive housing services program implementation, and then Devin Ellen, my colleague, will provide an update on public housing repositioning. And I'm going to jump right in. So this is, we're now at 2.5 years into supportive housing services implementation. We just submitted recently our Q2 report for the 23-24 fiscal year. So the first part of my presentation is going to give you some highlights on outcomes in terms of the programs that we've been delivering and the people that we've been able to serve and the impacts that these dollars are making in the community. I'm going to talk a little bit about these program areas: supportive housing, eviction prevention, safety off the streets, and some infrastructure. I'm not going to belabor or define a lot of these things in the interest of time, because I'm just going to go right through. Permanent supportive housing, our outcomes are tremendous. You know, I've told this group before that prior to the supportive housing services measure, permanent supportive housing placements in Clackamas County by people experiencing homelessness were in the tens per year. So tens of people were placed in permanent supportive housing per year with our programs in 2019 and before. And in the last 2.5 years, over 1,200 people have been served with permanent supportive housing, 738 households from July 2021. We have 11 service providers providing the supportive services throughout the metro region. Rapid rehousing is a recently funded program with supportive housing services, shorter term rent assistance and case management for up to 2 years. We had a goal for this year of serving 120 people, 120 households with rapid rehousing. We've exceeded that goal at the mid-year mark. 316 people have been served in rapid rehousing through the duration of the supportive housing services program. Our housing retention rates are stellar. People in permanent supportive housing, 98% of them plus, remain in housing a year after placement. They have not returned to homelessness. Similar rates of retention in rapid rehousing. These are far higher than national averages and far exceed our goals for these areas, which were to have at least 85% retention. Eviction prevention, one of the most effective uses of these dollars is to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. We served more than 2,000 people with eviction prevention services with SHS funding since the beginning of the program. We also support 140 units of shelter and transitional housing with supportive housing services dollars, including the Clackamas County Veterans Village, which you can see in the picture there. 788 people were served in shelter and transitional housing programs in that fiscal year. I'm not going to share Kathy's story, but I will put a link to Kathy's story in the chat for your interest. This is just important for us to recognize the real impact these programs make on people's lives in our community. And Kathy's a community member who recently experienced homelessness and was served in our programs and is now receiving permanent supportive housing supports. The supportive housing services measure has requirements for implementing counties to articulate how we will advance racial equity in the delivery of housing services, and our local implementation plan made commitments to work towards serving communities of color in our housing programs at greater rates than they are experiencing homelessness, to work at reducing the racial disparities that we see in homelessness in our communities. We have been successful. As of today, we are serving in programs that we fund People of color at greater rates than people of color are experiencing homelessness. And we've done that through bringing in 6 culturally specific providers, whereas the county prior to the supportive housing services measure had none. We've provided those culturally specific providers dedicated access to long-term rent assistance vouchers, those RLRA, making significant investments in these programs and implementing improvements in our system that have been provided to us as recommendations from the Coalition of Communities of Color that we've contracted with to take a look at our system with an eye towards meeting our equity commitments in our local implementation plan. Some signal successes in recent months and quarters in supportive housing services implementation includes, the first ever coordinated outreach program in the county in 2019 before the supportive housing services measure. Our outreach program in Clackamas County consisted of Dave Denny, who worked before he retired at social services as a homeless veterans outreach specialist. We now have about 24 outreach specialists all over the county. Supportive housing services funding funds 6 providers. We coordinate this street outreach from housing and community development with staff on my team. We also fund outreach in rural Clackamas County that's not funded by SHS, of course, but with funding from the state, we now have outreach with Love One and Ant Farm out in rural Clackamas County. We also experienced a backlog in our coordinated housing access system during COVID and from folks calling us seeking rent assistance. That a lot of that funding was made available as a response to the COVID pandemic. At one time, there was a backlog of more than 1,800 calls. People who have called SHA seeking assistance, had left a voicemail, and were awaiting a call back. At the height of that backlog, it was taking upwards of 6 weeks for a household that had called us to receive a call back. We implemented a lot of measures to get ahead of that. They have been successful. We now have cleared that backlog. People who call the SHA line, we are answering it live. And we did this by increasing staffing in the coordinated housing access team, bringing in some temporary employees in some instances, and contracting with 211 to answer the calls after hours and on holidays and weekends. This is a big success of our system. Now when someone calls and needs immediate assistance, they're able to get immediate assistance. So that's a huge success that's been made possible by these dollars. This is a picture of spending from the supportive housing services funds in Clackamas County as of mid-year, this fiscal year. All told, these amount to about $21 million in spending in the first half of the year. Last year, our entire expenditures as we ramped up programs was about $18 million. So we are on pace to really, we're still ramping up, right? So of those $21 million that have been spent in the first half of the fiscal year, 18 of it was spent in the second quarter. So in the second quarter of this fiscal year, we spent more of this funding than in the entire previous year, which is really signaling that we have now a full system of programs and services that have ramped up and are meeting people all over the county to deliver the services that they need. I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, but this is in your packet, and we're happy to answer questions about this. This is a really headline, and it was literally a headline last weekend that demonstrates the success that we're achieving with these programs. 2019, there were 1,166 people counted in January in the point in time count experiencing homelessness in Clackamas County. In January 2023, 410 were counted. That's a 65% decrease. So with the programs that we've launched and are coordinating throughout the county, we have seen a 65% decrease in homelessness in our county since 2019. That in a context where regionally, the 2023 point in time count saw a significant increase in our TriMet region. Statewide, we saw a more than 10% increase in homelessness year over year in 2023. And nationally, we saw a more than 15% increase in homelessness. So we are bucking those trends and moving in the other direction, the right direction, and actually decreasing homelessness in Clackamas County at a rate that I'm I'm not aware of any more rapid rate of decline in the United States. I might be wrong, but I'm happy to celebrate Clackamas being the best. Looking ahead, just want to note some of the initiatives that are coming ahead. Recently launched services for youth and survivors of violence, including services of this type in rural Clackamas County with state and general funds, with Ant Farm. We're working on we have invested in a health housing system integration team in my staff that's working to integrate our homelessness response services with healthcare and behavioral healthcare in a much more coordinated fashion, and preparing the county to implement the upcoming Medicaid waiver, which will make Medicaid funding and Medicaid members eligible to receive Medicaid funded housing services, including Medicaid funded rent assistance, Medicaid funded case management. So we will be integrating Medicaid funding into our housing system beginning the end of this year. You know about the very successful Clackamas County Veterans Village, which has been operating since 2019. Recently, the Health, Housing, and Human Services purchased that entire property, half of which was vacant, a vacant lot. That lot is being developed as another village, like the Clackamas County Veterans Village. Its temporary name is known as the Clackamas Village. So we'll see another, hopefully very successful village adjacent to the Clackamas County Veterans Village there off of Jennifer in near Gladstone. We also, and this picture in the background is an early design drawing of a new resource center that will be in Oregon City. We provided a grant of supportive housing services funds of $10 million to the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County to purchase and design and build a resource center of a place where service providers can collaborate, meet people where they are, who can come in and get connected with our programs. So that's an exciting development. I apologize for being so quick and hasty, but I just want to respect your time tonight. And I saw that you had quite a few other items on your agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone over to my colleague, Devin Ellen.
Thanks, Fahid. It's so inspiring. It's a hard one to follow, so I'll do my best. Good evening. I'm Devin Ellen. I'm the Director of Housing Development with the Housing Authority. I'm here to talk about a process the Housing Authority is undertaking to reposition its 445 public housing unit portfolio. So this portfolio consists of 3 100-unit multifamily developments: Hillside Park in Milwaukee, Clackamas Heights and Oregon City View Manor in Oregon City, and 145-unit scattered site portfolio consisting of single-family homes located throughout Clackamas County. So what is repositioning? You may know Clackamas County has the oldest public housing in Oregon and among the oldest in the country. And for decades now, the federal government has reduced budgets for public housing repairs and operations, and housing authorities like HAC are struggling to adequately maintain their public housing units. In place of investing in public housing, the federal government has increased its investment in affordable housing programs like the Section 8 Rental Assistance Program and the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. A few years ago, in 2018, recognizing that housing authorities across the country were facing a significant backlog of capital needs, HUD created programs to allow housing authorities to reposition their public housing portfolios to a more sustainable platform like Section 8. Repositioning essentially means converting the assistance the housing authority receives from HUD from public housing or the Section 9 program to Section 8 rental assistance. The main difference being that in public housing, the subsidy is attached to the unit. In Section 8, the subsidy is attached to the tenant. Repositioning will allow Clackamas County to replace its aging public housing portfolio with new rent assistance vouchers and newly developed affordable housing. And this will happen through a process of relocating existing residents using new rent assistance vouchers, disposing of and or redeveloping existing property, and using asset sale proceeds to develop new housing. The Housing Authority plans to use a process called Section 18 disposition to reposition its remaining public housing portfolio. As part of this repositioning process, each displaced household will receive a Section 8 tenant protection voucher and relocation assistance. This voucher will provide the household with rental assistance that will allow them to move to a location and unit of their choosing. Using the Section 8 voucher, a team of relocation specialists commissioned by the Housing Authority will help each household find replacement housing that suits their individual needs. That could include exploring homeownership opportunities, moving into the private rental market, or moving to a unit owned by the Housing Authority. All residents will be provided the right to return to a newly constructed home once the redevelopment is complete. And if they choose to return to a new property, their moving costs will be covered by the Housing Authority. So why is this happening now? The passing of the 2018 Metro Affordable Housing Bond and the 2020 Supportive Housing Services Measure presents the Housing Authority with a unique opportunity to use its existing public housing assets to leverage public and private resources to increase affordable housing opportunities in Clackamas County. The Housing Authority set aside nearly half of its bond revenue to leverage opportunities related to repositioning. Clackamas County has also allocated supportive housing services funding for this. And this really provides a once in a generation opportunity for the Housing Authority to improve its existing assets, to build more affordable housing and create a sustainable platform for the Housing Authority that is responsive to the realities and funding opportunities and congressional appropriations. As I mentioned previously, the Housing Authority has 445 units of public housing in its portfolio. Hillside Park in Milwaukee, originally constructed in the early 1940s, is farthest along in the repositioning process. The Housing Authority is planning to demolish the existing units and redevelop the site with up to 500 new units in 2 phases. The Housing Authority received Section 18 approval from HUD last summer, and residents are currently being relocated to new homes. And we expect to break ground on the first 275 units this summer. Clackamas Heights and Oregon City View Manor are located about a half mile from one another in the Park Place neighborhood of Oregon City. These units were originally constructed in the mid-1900s and have been deemed obsolete by HUD standards. The Housing Authority is planning to demolish and redevelop the existing 100 units on the 16-acre Clackamas Heights property with up to 250 new affordable units. The existing units at Oregon City View Manor are planned for disposition, and all the asset sale proceeds will go to support the Clackamas Heights redevelopment and other affordable housing projects. So currently we have community engagement underway, and the site concept plans are being developed for the new Park Place redevelopment at Clackamas Heights. So we're currently preparing the Section 18 applications for both properties and plan to submit applications to HUD this spring. And finally, the Housing Authority scattered site portfolio, consisting of 145 single-family homes located throughout the county, is planned for disposition, with each home being sold under one of 3 scenarios. The first scenario is affordable homeownership opportunities for existing residents through a land trust model. Number 2 is on the private market at appraised value. Number 3 is to a community-based organization to deliver recovery-oriented supportive housing and services. All sale proceeds that the Housing Authority receives from the sales are restricted by HUD for affordable housing and will be used to support the Park Place redevelopment and other affordable housing projects. The Housing Authority is preparing a Section 18 application right now for the scattered site portfolio. And because of these repositioning efforts, the amount of affordable housing will increase in Clackamas County. This slide shows the expected outcomes, which include 750 new units, 445 new Section 8 vouchers, and up to 145 scattered site units preserved for affordable homeownership or recovery-oriented supportive housing. And as you can see from the map, the Housing Authority's scattered site units are located in jurisdictions that several in this group represent, including Milwaukee, Oregon City, Sandy, Gladstone, Estacada, Westland, Wilsonville, and throughout unincorporated Clackamas County. The portfolio consists primarily of 3 and 4 bedroom units, and outside of the 12 duplexes, a triplex and a fourplex, most of the units are single family homes. As part of the Section 8 process, the Housing Authority is hoping to secure support for its disposition application from the local jurisdictions where the scattered site units are located. We want to present this briefing to provide an overview of our repositioning plans and the opportunity for you to ask any questions. Our county administrator will be reaching out to each jurisdiction with a scattered site unit and requesting written support. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions if we have time.
Yeah, we can take 2 questions, Councilor Pratt and then Mayor Buck.
Hi, Devin. I mean, this is great that there will be more housing in the end, but I'm wondering in the interim, the people that are displaced during this repositioning, if there's enough, I mean, they're getting Section 8 vouchers, I understand, but is there enough housing for them in the interim?
That's a great question. So in the last 5 years, we've been developing affordable housing units under the Affordable Housing Bond. We have almost 900 in the pipeline right now. And all of those units, we've written into the tenant selection plans that folks displaced due to repositioning from the Housing Authority will be given priority placement on the waiting list. And we're working with a great consultant who has been doing this for over 10 years now and has never once had an issue finding someone in a new home.
Mayor Buck.
Thank you all. Presentations. I mean, it's great news all around, and yeah, I know how that housing. We had a unit here in LO that was, I think, federally owned and just in horrible condition, and they were able to, not through this specific program, obviously the county's running, but they repositioned that and it went to a nonprofit who could rehabilitate it, and they were able to, maintain the residents. But yeah, sometimes, these units are in dire need of new life, right? I wanted to just ask Vahid for an update on the many of us submitted kind of preliminary letters of interest on the SHS program for the cities, and how that evaluation process is coming along.
Yeah, and I'm welcome Adam to respond to that as well. But staff have been just really delighted at the response. The number of cities that put in applications is really encouraging. Lots of opportunities for partnership, lots of great innovative ideas, lots of community-led need identification and solution presentation. So that was exactly the outcome we were hoping for from the initiative. So in that regard, it's already a success as far as we're concerned. We have, completed preliminary reviews of all of the applications. We intend to schedule an opportunity very soon with our Board of Commissioners to bring our recommendations based on that review forward, and start talking about the details of grants and contracts. Adam, any additional detail you want to add to that?
No, I'll say I kind of want to double down on that first comment. Mayor Buck, one of the top priorities for me and Vahid was better collaboration between the county and our city partners. And I think we certainly achieved that goal. We got proposals from 11 cities in Clackamas County, which I think is really awesome. And we're confident that the outcome of this will be partnership in one form or another with each of the city around the funding, right? We have to make the recommendations to the board. Vahid and I spent a bunch of time together last Friday combing through things, talking about how to best kind of make this work. And so we're really confident that we'll have a partnership with every city on the back end of this, which is just so cool. And it's a testament to your leadership, all of you. This conversation started at the C4 retreat last summer when we floated this notion of city-led initiatives. Vahid and I really leaned into it. Our board supported it. And now we're seeing it in action, and we know that what will come on the other side of that is even more partnership and more collaboration between all of us. So that's great.
Thank you both very much. Great work, and just excellent job all around.
Mayor Milch, can you be really quick?
Okay. Devin, I just wondered, you mentioned that one of the things you're going to be doing with some of these scattered sites is to allow people to buy them in sort of a land trust model. When you say people that are currently living there will be allowed to buy them, do you mean the people will be able to buy the home they're actually currently living in now? Is that your intent? Or people that are somewhere in the system would be able to buy one of these homes somewhere?
Both. So if somebody wants to purchase the home that they live in and they're able to do that, we would love to see that happen. If someone wants to purchase a site that they're not living in and they're able to do that, we support that as well.
Thanks.
Great. No, good news all around. I really appreciate the housing group here tonight. Those are really positive numbers. And I think, Rebecca, you got your question answered in the chat, correct?
Yep, I sure did. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you. Yep. All right. We're going to move into our next item, which is the ODOT supplemental EA comment period. And I believe we've got Jamie Stasny coming on board. Good evening, Jamie.
Good evening, Chair Hodson and members of C4. It's been a minute. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying the bits of sunshine we're starting to get. I know I am. After a long winter, it always brightens my spirit. And I heard we're going to get some warm temps next week, so I'm looking forward to that. But that's not why I'm here tonight. I'm here to talk to you guys about tolling because I know it's your favorite thing. So thought you'd want me to come back and do that. Just kidding. There are some pressing matters coming up soon, so I'll be back again, I'm sure. It's been a long haul. We've been talking about this for what, 3 years now? Still going. So the update is that ODOT is pursuing what is called a supplemental environmental assessment for the I-205 tolling project. The scope of that project has shrunk. No longer is it, them looking at tolling the 7-mile section of road from Stafford all the way through to Oregon City. They have shrunk down the scope just to look at a point toll on the Abernathy Bridge. It will be one gantry on the bridge and then a gantry on the off-ramps. So that changes the analysis that they need to do. So we have had 2 technical meetings so far led by ODOT. They are doing 1 meeting a month. They invite all participating agencies, elected officials, staff, everyone. These are not just technical meetings. It's just the only meeting we have, and we only have 1 a month. So it's different than the development of the original EA because we don't have any of the technical committees. We just have 1 meeting a month where everyone comes and they give a quick update. So we've had 2 of those. After the last meeting, we saw the areas of potential influence or impact, that they're going to be analyzing. We got a list of the intersections that they'll be looking at and the corridors that they'll be monitoring. No data, no information. So that's what we have so far. Very little, considering that the draft supplemental EA will be dropping for review a 30-day public comment period in July of this year. That is only a few months away. So we don't have a lot of technical data to share with you, clearly, because I just told you everything we've seen. But we do know from last time that 30 days is not enough time to review information and materials, especially when we know we don't have the data, right? We need more time, especially if we're not going to see much until it comes out. So to be brief, I know you've got a lot on your agenda tonight. We have prepared a letter thinking that it would be a good use of your time and everyone's time right now to start working toward getting a little more time for the review. So the letter in your packet was drafted to request an additional 30 days of comment period. so that we would have a full 60 days to review the supplemental EA. Last time, you'll recall we had 45 days. It originally was 30 days, which is the federal minimum. They extended 15 additional days. So that was what we had last time. We were asking for 60 days this time. So you've been through this before. I don't need to belabor it. I'm not going to read the letter to you. It's in your packet. Looking to you all to see if you're wanting to move this forward, if you have comments or feedback on the letter, and if you have any questions for me.
Jamie, I will say thank you for being here this evening, and my thoughts right off the get-go from reading the letter, I thought it was very well done. I think it reiterates, again, unfortunately, many of the points that we've already made are along this matter, especially down in, I think it was, point 4, just again about, we've asked and we have asked, and there's been no answers back to our questions. So I like the letter. I think it is something that should move forward, in my opinion. So I appreciate the hard work by you and your team, Jamie. Thank you. Counselor Sherman, thoughts?
Well done. I thought it was just very well structured. It makes logical or draws logical conclusions, and it doesn't seem like a big stretch to ask that much. I think, ODOT's perspective that, hey, we're giving you 30 days, you're not giving us anything. You're mandated at 30 days. So, it would be nice to have a little bit more. Do we want to, the last sentence we're asking for a response, do we want to make it more like, we ask for your response, so it's actually Director Strickler that's responding versus just a random staff member? I don't know if that's, do we want to ask for something like that? I just think it makes sense. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Sherman, thank you. We agree. That makes a lot of sense. We do have a deadline for getting a response. We need to take quick action. We don't have much time, so it makes sense to be very specific about who we're asking to respond. So I think we can easily add that. The letter's addressed to Director Strickler, and I think he is the one we would hope to hear back from.
That's great. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to make the statement that it's from a staff perspective for everyone who's involved. It's probably the worst time of the year to be dropping a document this hefty. That's summer vacation for a lot of people, and whether it's 30 days or 60 days, so that's not very reasonable. So I think it even that much more amplifies the need to have more time. So be great if there was an motion to approve the letter with that small amendment.
Sherry waved her hand first, and Brett, can I count on you for a second? Great. So we have a first and a second on the letter. Any further discussion, comments, questions? I'm going to throw in a comment. Paul, I really think that them dropping it in July is really coincidental. I'm sure that there was no ill intent with dropping it in the middle of summer like that. So that's my final comment.
Appreciate that, Mayor. Always hard to know.
Hopefully my sarcasm came through. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands for questions or discussion. So all those in favor of moving forward with this letter with the changes proposed by Councilor Sherman? Great. Anyone opposed? I'm not opposing. I'm for it. I'm absolutely for it. Great. That passes. We'll make that change, and Jamie will go raise more havoc with ODOT. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, legislative update with the very own Trent Wilson. Good evening, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening. Thanks for having me back. Good to see all of you fine folks on this fine March 7th evening. I'm here with the legislative update, and I think some of the big news is that today's going to be the last day of the state legislature. The Senate just gavelled down, and on the House side, they just elected Representative Fahey as the new speaker, and they're waiting for the Senate sine die bill to come over, and they will conclude here in a little bit. I know you have long meetings here at C4. They have been meeting since 10 o'clock this morning, so they are really running to try to be done so they don't have to work through the weekend. kudos to them, I think. So the update here is that they've had a very busy short session. And I think that many of you are knowing that and catching it in the news. They accomplished, I think they would say that they accomplished their 2 goals of passing major housing initiatives as well as major addictions recovery initiatives as well. And so on the addictions recovery piece, that's House Bill 4002. A lot of articles about it that will do it a lot more justice than I will. But for our purposes here, I want you to know that Clackamas County has signed a letter to participate in the deflection program that is created within that program. And so what House Bill 4002 does is it creates a misdemeanor U, is the phrasing, or PCS U, which has a maximum penalty in jail of up to about 6 months if someone is arrested for a certain amount of possession or caught using within public spaces. And so it's pretty severe compared to what has been the case for the last few years since the passage of Measure 110. That does not start until September 1. And so there's a little bit of a delay as to when that would be enforceable. And between now and then, what the county's participation in by sending a letter in to say that we would participate in the deflection program is the county, any county that signed up for that, not just Clackamas County, but any county that signed up for that, will be able to receive an early tranche of funding to set up their deflection program. And so that will probably be arriving in the next 6-ish or so weeks in order to start doing the preparation to get ready for September 1. The money it's about $20 or so million statewide to do that deflection program. And that's not going to sound like a lot of money when you think, oh, there's 36 counties. When you do the math, it's not like a lot of money per county. We're lucky because we're a bigger county, but it's still not going to be like a mind-blowing amount of money. But keep in mind that you're trying to get from September 1 until the end of June. So really is a short-term program, and then the next legislature will have to fund it for a biennium. So think of it like that whenever the money comes out. There is no official number yet. It's still a formula number. That's an estimate that has to go through the Criminal Justice Commission. So none of those numbers are really known or public yet. Everyone's heard guesses, but it's based on that $20 million formula, give or take. So that's it's a really big piece. One, I think, critical win within Clackamas County, I would say, is that there was a list of projects associated with House Bill 4010 that were to set up, sticks and bricks type programs for improving access to care. And one of those is a program that will be in Milwaukee. That's our 23-hour crisis stabilization center. It was already in motion. And so the Board of Commissioners had already worked with several folks in the Sheriff's Office to set aside funding to create that. The state legislature has funded that project basically in full at $4 million. And so the great news is that's $4 million that will go to that project. That's $4 million that will be freed up that was going to be dedicated there. So even though it's a $4 million legislative win, it really is an $8 million win for Clackamas County, because that means that, the board and others can sort of think about how to redivert that money into additional programs to support this population. So really cool win there within this program. On the housing side, that's primarily a housing production bill that was created, and it's very much a land use bill. So a lot of cities that are within the Metro UGB, you will sort of be lumped into a group, and those cities that are outside of the Metro UGB, you'll have sort of independent capabilities that were created from that bill. Really what those bills were doing, though, is creating a lot of funding opportunities, or kind of a lot of funding opportunities, a lot less than were expected. I think the governor was aiming for about $600 million of opportunity. It turned out to be only about $360 million or so, such is the way of the legislature. About $100 million in infrastructure projects. And so a couple of really cool things out of that. So Oak Lodge Water, y'all got $3 million out of the state legislature out of this bill. Congratulations. Lake Oswego, I think y'all got almost $2 million for some water programming for Habitat for Humanity. So kudos to y'all for those big pieces. The Navigation Center that Vahid was just talking about a few moments ago, it's listed in a different bill, for $2 million, and that's on top of $10 million grant that the Board of County Commissioners has already, put into that project. So that Housing Navigation Center is continuing forward with a pretty big win from the legislature. A lot of great pieces there. The Clackamas County Courthouse also was listed as funded, or a significant amount of the funding request was authorized. That happened tonight. Both of those bills passed this evening while we were meeting here at C4, so that's a huge win. That's $15 million towards that project. Still a little bit to go based on what was estimated, so some work to do there for Clackamas County, but a really successful financial legislative season for us and all of our partners. And there's a lot of small programs that also received funding from the legislature that are also within Clackamas County, social programs, Head Start programs, Parrot Creek, some really cool wins to, I think, celebrate. And Clackamas County, I think, did really well here in the state session with what would be the two major initiatives and some of the other pieces. One bill I want to flag for y'all so that y'all are all tracking it as public agencies is Senate Bill 1575. Some of your colleagues or advocates may have flagged this for y'all in the past. This bill is informally called the Duty to Defend Bill. This is in your public contracts, almost every public contract that you initiate with anybody that designs or engineers something for you. This bill takes the duty to defend out of those contracts. You're no longer able to put it in there, which means that if something were to go wrong in a public project, the way it would work now is that those engineers or design firms would be responsible for defending that work if it's a county or a city project or a TriMet project or a water project in some cases. So it would take the designers who would know the most about the project, put them in a position to have to legally defend what went wrong or try to figure out what went wrong. Since that is going away, it shifts the burden to do that back onto the public agency that's contracting the work. So potentially it puts public agencies in a little bit of a liable situation to have to make the case that somebody else did the wrong thing, even though you might not have been the one to have designed it. That's a very short way of saying that it really is trying to get to an issue for small firms who are trying to bid on public contracts, because as you know, as public agencies, you have to take the lowest bidder within when you have those types of contracts. Even though they're the qualified professionals, you still in some ways are required to take the lowest bidder. And that precludes or limits small firms to be able to bid on certain things, primarily because of insurance and the cost of insurance and the cost of going to gather it. So it's a complicated topic. What this bill did, unfortunately, was shift the burden of liability from small firms or firms onto public agencies. It's a bummer. Those bills, I think, were really complicated. They were fought hard on both sides, and there was never a unanimous vote on it. Well, we have heard, and so this is my sort of note to you, we have heard that the governor's office is willing to hold on signing on this bill because she's interested in hearing if there is additional heartburn and what that might be. So I would implore each of you to reach out to your friends at LOC, or if you happen to have that special cell phone number that goes to the governor's mansion, then maybe make yourself known or make your interest known if you have concerns about this bill. Look it up, talk with your legal counsel to see if you really have concerns about it or if you have examples of where it's worked for you or not, or let it lie, whatever your preference is. But it's a bill that I think will affect every one of your jurisdictions or agencies, whatever, because it's specific to public agencies and working with small firms. So wanted to flag that for you because even though it has passed, it is not dead because the governor still has to sign it. So it's a possibility that it could be vetoed or delayed. And by doing that, I hope what would happen is it would create an opportunity to work on a solution towards the actual problem and not who carries the liability. And I'm sure something will happen next year if it were to be vetoed. And I think that would be the commitment by a lot of public agencies, is trying to get to the root of the issue, not who's liable for the issue. And I think that would be the dream. But if the governor signs it, just be aware that this is going to change how some public contracts move forward. I think maybe on like a last note here, those are the big highlights from the state legislature. But if you have been tracking the feds a little bit, they are potentially about to pass some of their budget bills. And many of you had federal earmarks in last year's earmark submission process. So if you had those projects in there, perk up and go look to see what might be in the existing draft appropriation bills. What I've seen today and this week is that Westland, and I don't see you in here, your bridge project, the pipe underneath the Abernathy Bridge, is receiving a little bit of funding. I think Oregon City also not here tonight. Also had a little bit of funding in there too. Clackamas County has a couple of projects, one on the mountain, one within the city of Gladstone, within the high school. And so a few projects that are moving forward. There are more appropriation bills coming, but I just wanted to flag that if you had an earmark in last year's set of bills. Those are potentially going to get passed either this weekend and maybe some of the other ones in the next couple of weeks. So please watch for those. That's my update on state and federal pieces. Happy to take any questions. I know that was a lot of information real quick.
Well, that was good, Trent. Thank you. Kenny.
The only other bill that I'm aware of that might have passed today, do you know if there was any update with the campaign finance law?
That bill passed.
Okay.
Tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other fun questions or comments? Once, twice, sold. All right. Trent, thank you, sir. Great job here. And is this your first official session?
Well, I've been in Clackamas County since 2013, but this is my first session in the hallway, is how I've been saying it. So yes, in that regard, it is true.
Well, great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was good to see some of you in the hallway, including Mayor Buck.
All right, we're gonna move into other updates, other business. JPAC impact updates. JPAC, what do you got?
Well, our last JPAC meeting, I was actually out of town, and Councilor Sherman was nice enough to step in. They had an interesting, Councilor Sherman wants to give an update discussion on kind of a big piece of conversation around the RTP that we had in regards to the RMPP. You all remember that was a big deal, and we wanted to ensure that there is a greater process when the RMPP comes in for the MTIP update. And so Metro put forth what I felt like was a great kind of process, and that was discussed at the meeting. And Councilor Sherman, how did that go?
I do not remember any of that. It's been so many meetings since then. So Mayor Buck, you provided a great update.
Okay. Yeah. They had a great, as you remember, we wanted ODOT to have to come in and go through, not typically these MTIP amendments, the JPAC, they're on the consent agenda, no discussion. And we said for the RMPP, I mean, there needs to be a robust process and discussion when that comes in for MTIP for future funding. So, sorry, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, Brian, I'm not sure if the hand up in the audience is Christine Lewis. It says Christine, but I'm not sure if that's Councilor Christine Lewis. She might want to add something to the conversation.
So is this Christine Lewis, Councilor Lewis?
That's you, Christine. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I've been trapped on the other side of the Zoom, and thank you for bringing me over. I think it's really critical to note that Brian Winsheimer normally attends on behalf of ODOT, but Chris Ford was in his chair, maybe by design, and asked a number of questions, almost as if to undo the agreement that we all came to. He couched it like asking for some clarification. He was a bit bewildered by this process. So I think it's just really critical that everybody know that we're going to be holding ODOT to account for what was a deal struck in order to get the RTP passed. So not blaming it on Ryan not being there, but we're going to have to make sure all of ODOT knows that we're serious.
Thank you, Councilor Lewis. I have to say, Metro's team really did a great job putting together a comprehensive approach to the MTIP regarding the RMPP.
I just want to add one thing that people are just want to keep your attuned to a couple things. Number one is that there was a legal challenge to the RTP by an outside group. That was one thing. It didn't really come up at JPAC per se, but it's just something to keep your eye on when we talk about the RTP. The other one is in December of last year, just a few months ago, there was a federal legislation passed that required measurements of greenhouse gases by all the MPOs in the country. And how that's calculated, there's a little bit, as I understand it, some flexibility, and there's a decision needs to be made by JPAC by August 8th. So it's about how we, in my opinion, how we measure up to other MPOs of the country, meet the federal qualifications for that, and basically produce projects that ultimately meet the criteria. I got my fingers crossed on the face of it. I like that. I'm a person who believes that we need to have metrics in decision making, and having measurements on this would be great. But I think it might help demonstrate, and we need to do some more research on this to dispel some of the myths out there with regard to what contributes to greenhouse gas and what doesn't. Some of the folks who don't believe that adding lanes to freeways or highways or bottlenecks is somehow good for the climate. And there's data out there right now, significant data that proves the opposite, that things like bottlenecks and traffic congestion actually contributes to greenhouse gases. So I'm hoping that we measure up in a high way on it with MPOs as far as what regulations or what measurements we adopt, and we're rigorous about it. Because I think it will actually, number one, result in better projects. And I think inadvertently, I think that's going to create projects that are safer for the people that are commuting, walking, bicycling, and so forth. So I think it's a win if it's done right. If it's not done right, it's going to be the same old, same old. So more to come on that. We'll try to maybe build that into a presentation. I didn't really realize that, early on when we set the agenda or the work plan for the year, that this was something that would be before us. But apparently JPAC, or not JPAC, but Metro staff have recently put together a presentation about this. So hopefully have more to share with you in the future on that. That's all I have there.
Okay. MPAC?
MPAC I can do. MPAC I do remember. My apologies for shirking my JPAC duties. Last NPAC meeting, we had presentations on the garbage and recycling system facilities update. That's kind of their 2030 regional waste plan. Probably the most important aspect of that, they kind of demonstrated the outcomes of various types of investments in the future, whether it be kind of a baseline investment strategy, a full service strategy of a smaller grouping of larger facilities, a distributed structure where it's more mid-sized facilities across all 3 counties, or the no build, they just put a lot more money into the existing facilities. And what I thought was really an interesting kind of aspect of that, with all of the different types of improvements, services available, the most important aspect to all stakeholders was proximity. How far do you have to drive to get somewhere? That was the number one across the board, highest rated important aspect of these facilities are how close are they? And so that, that may have a very big impact on the decisions that are made going forward from an investment perspective. The other presentation we had was on urban growth. It was their group of economists talking about kind of the population and in relation to the urban growth report. Again, not anything shocking. We are in a situation where people, net population change has been away from the Oregon metro area. People have been moving away from this region. We are continuing to see that. And at the same time, the other kind of key aspect is we're not reproducing enough. The birth death rate is actually lessening over time. So for those that are able to, please reproduce more in the metro region. Ultimately, though, I thought, the expectation is the employee population ratio, effectively the labor force, has probably topped out and is going to drift lower over time. So I think, ultimately that is a rationale for not increasing the urban growth, area. That was kind of my takeaway from the whole thing, or that's at least kind of the their methodology they're using right now. So that's all I got from MPAC. Thank you.
Councilor Sherman, thank you very much. C4 retreat planning.
Yes. So in the next week or so, we hope to finalize the dates for our 2024 C4 retreat. We sent out a couple of different surveys at this point. Most recently, in the past couple of weeks, we have sent out a doodle poll with a handful of dates, a few in June and a few in September, asking for C4 members to let us know what dates work best for you all and which dates there are conflicts. We have about 12 respondents so far. So if you have not responded to the doodle poll, we please ask that you do so ASAP, and I'll put it here in the chat just for easy access. Again, we're looking to finalize our dates within the next week or so. Right now, there's a slight preference to host it June 21st and 22nd. The second option is to do it September 27th, 28th. But we'll check back in with the exec committee, and we will be reporting back on the final dates for the 2024 C4 retreat.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Any other business or city announcements? Going once, twice, sold. Okay. Well, everyone, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner, and
Second.
Councilor Sherman with the second. All those in favor of adjourning this fun-filled meeting? Anyone opposed? Anyone want to hang out? I saw that, Mayor Buck. You want to continue to hang out? We can do that. No? Okay. All right. Well, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a great evening, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.